My name is Dr. Jeevitha Channappa. I'm a clinical teaching fellow working in Ashford and St. Peter's Hospital, which is in Surrey, United Kingdom. In my role, I teach undergraduate students. So we have students from different universities who'd come through our hospital for 5-week placements in surgical departments, and we organize teaching for them. So this is one of the activities we have included during the last week of their placements with us. So it's called Escape the Operating Room. So what we wanted and why we introduced the escape room itself was we found that engagement with students was a bit less, and we were trying to get more attendance and trying to make it more dynamic and interactive, alternative to the traditional didactic teaching we usually have. Along with that, we wanted to simulate like a high stakes scenario and kind of relate it to how a normal clinical scenario would be when they are foundation trainees, and also try to assess their decision making under pressure and see as to how they work as a team, and if they're able to manage pressure when driven into a time bound challenge. And the thing that we wanted to check was also if this format can be used as a potential tool for assessment. So we have a series of teaching that has taken place over the 5 weeks, and we have this escape room at the end of the 5 weeks, which kind of incorporates everything they've learned during their placements. And it's like an assessment as to who's been more engaged, who's taken part in those activities, and who kind of comes out well. Along with that, we also wanted to check things like teamwork, communication, who steps up as a leader. So all of these things that we cannot assess in normal didactic teaching. And also see if this kind of a gamified experience enhances student engagement, and if we can use it as a method to evaluate preparedness for clinical placements when they go ahead and become foundation doctors. So, firstly, we before we started up the escape room, we wanted to set the scene. So our target audience were penultimate or final year medical students who were on the 5-week placements at St. Peter's Hospital. And the recommended group size to enter the escape room, we usually kept it as 3 per team. And the location was in a simulation suite that we have. So we are able to access, record, and also voice over so what's happening in the simulation room itself. So we ran a pilot session, which was beforehand, before delivering the escape room, which was kind of overseen by the simulation lead in our trust. And after that, each session just required one clinical teaching fellow to oversee and facilitate the session itself. So our whole escape room was based on these study objectives. So these are the basics that a foundation doctor needs to know when they're assessing a patient. Are they able to perform a structured A to E assessment when they are in front of either a deteriorating or an unwell surgical patient? Are they able to recognize and respond to sepsis? So we have iSimulate, which kind of simulates patient's observation, which we can control from the control room itself, and vary patient's heart rate, saturations, blood pressure accordingly. So with these signs, are the students able to identify signs of sepsis earlier on and initiate the sepsis 6 protocol? Following which, are they able to diagnose or put in differential diagnosis for the patient scenario and think about investigations which is related to the same? And secondly, as it is a surgical operating room, we have a simulated setting which kind of is in an operating theater, and they can showcase their surgical skills. And this is obviously time bound, so they are under pressure. And finally, manage the post-op complication of the patient itself. So the storyline is of one patient who's admitted in the A&E. They are supposed to assess the patient, diagnose them, send them to theaters, showcase their surgical skills, After that, they are sent to the recovery room, and if they develop any post-op complication, they must be able to manage it. So it is a journey of a patient throughout the hospital, and once they're able to completely assess all of this, they'll be able to escape the room. Okay, so this was the study objective that we based our escape room on. And then came building the room to inculcate all of these objectives into our escape room. So this was our intro scenario that we put up. And so this is Miss Watson, who's a 22-year-old woman who complains of an abdomen pain. So the students were supposed to assess her and treat her as necessary. So this is the first clue card that they get, and they're supposed to read the clue card aloud, and then the timer starts. Okay, so the clues are hidden all throughout the room, and they're supposed to find out codes to unlock each bag, like you can see on the right side, which is locked, to find the next clue. And if they're ever stumped in the escape room, they were given 2 clues, but obviously this adds on 5 minutes. So I will take you through the journey of the escape room itself. So this was our setup, and this contains every scenario and inculcates the learning objective we talked about. The first one was, so this is our patient, Miss Watson. So this is an Apollo mannequin who is kind of set up where it can voice out. So the patient can take a brief history. Along with that, we can all, through the iSimulate, we can also increase the respiratory rate or make them hear breath sounds where there is a wheeze. So the students are supposed to do a proper A to E assessment, recognize signs of sepsis, and initiate sepsis 6. And once they've done that, they get the clue to the second one, which takes them to a game of Jenga. So here they're supposed to pull out the blocks, which shows them the differential diagnosis, and match them to the investigations to get the code for the next clue box. So as you can see in the card too, it says that they need to know the differential diagnosis of the right iliac fossa pain and match it to the investigation. Next was, because it's a surgical theme escape room, they're supposed to match the incisions that is caused by the corresponding procedures. And once they get the right order, they will get the clue for the next one. And then in a simulated surgical environment, they're supposed to do a suturing over here. They can do an interrupted simple suture and apply a sterile dressing. And once they've completed the task and remove the dressing pack, the code for the next clue is written on the dressing pack itself. And then they're expected to solve this puzzle, which shows a CT image of a post-op ileus or a bowel obstruction. So like I said, all of this teaching has been delivered to them priorly during their 5-week placement. So once they solve the puzzle and interpret the CT abdomen as it's a post-op ileus, they're supposed to initiate something called as a suck and drip, where they're supposed to insert an NG tube using the mannequin. And on successfully inserting the NG tube, in the last part of the NG tube insertion is a pH monitoring. So when they open the pH monitoring, they have a box which takes them to the last clue, where there's a telephone in the sim suit, and they're tasked with handing over all of the findings they have found so far to a Twilight. And we assess if the handover is according to the SBAR format, which is situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. And once they've completely fulfilled all of these criteria, they're able to exit the room. So this was our storyline where we take the patients from their assessment in the A&E to the theater to the post-operative room. And once they have done all of the tasks, including an A to E assessment, knowing the differential diagnosis and investigations required, 2 skills where they can perform suturing, and another skill where they are inserting an NG tube, and also briefly handing over using an SBAR format. They are able to escape the room. So our simulation methodology was, firstly, we divide them into groups of 3. We pre-brief them where we take them through the sim room, show them what are the necessary tools that is available for them to use, make sure that they're oriented to the simulation environment and also the objectives or the escape room itself. And followed by that, they run the simulation. So the minimum we have is a group of students who have completed in 45 minutes, and the maximum is an hour 15. And we have a leaderboard, and also we are still in the process. So we have had almost 30 to 40 students undergo the escape room. But this is ongoing process because we get 5-week placements of students incoming almost every month. So this is something that is in the process and it is ongoing. And we make sure that we take an informed consent from the students so that we can record audio and video so that this aids for a reflective learning and evaluation process itself. And then during the simulation activity itself, there is a CTF who is observing and taking real-time notes to check for collaborative performance or critical thinking. Followed by which we have a debrief in the end for 30 minutes where we talk about what was the main focus of it, how was your clinical decision making, how was your teamwork, who came out as a leader, and how was the problem solving skills. And finally, the students are given a feedback, a post-activity questionnaire to assess if what was the educational value, did they find it attractive, were they engaged, is there any areas of improvement that we can include in the escape room itself. So these were voices from the room, some of the student reflection and takeaways that we got from the escape room itself. So majority of them liked it, and they were really thrilled that they kind of got a simulated environment where it was time bound. So we have assessed them doing other skills, but not time bound. So you could literally see students handshaking when they're suturing, and some of them like they stated that escape room was a great way to challenge and reinforce their clinical knowledge. They liked the puzzles and the clinical scenarios, and they thought that it was a good balance between like hands-on task and also conceptual thinking. And what we found was if one student is better at one thing, the other takes over and does another task, which was very good. And they maintain like a closed loop communications is very good, very important, especially in a clinical setting when we are working as foundation doctors or as co-trainee doctors. Along with that, they really they liked it that it took them through the journey of the patient from A&E to the post-op setting. And for most of them, this was like the first escape room that they have taken part in. It was a great experience for them. So the key takeaways was that active learning works. So gamified simulation definitely did drive engagement and deepened retention. Also, it helps in the multimodal skill development, where it's not just a clinical or cognitive thinking, where here, because we are mirroring real life surgical challenges, we get to know how is their communication, how is their teamwork, how is their leadership. So these are important things that cannot be taught in a didactic teaching method. So that was something very interesting to observe. Also, the collaboration and time management was something that can be improved. Along with that, we saw that universally we got strong feedback to support the value of the escape room itself. And we're thinking about inculcating it more into the undergraduate curriculum for medical students itself.
Just Great. Hi, I hope you can all hear me. So thank you for having us for me and Greg. So my name is Gena Greaves. I'm one of the clinical skills lecturers at the School of Medicine at the University of Liverpool in the UK. So we're here to sort of share with you what the work that we've been doing in the last year for our undergraduate students, which is our Escape to Graduate escape room to enhance their non-technical skills. So Start moving on. Yeah, so just to introduce you to the team. So it's not just me and Greg. Unfortunately, we can't claim all credit for it all. It's been part of a wider team. So these are our members of the team who aren't with us today, and also the department and the support from the school itself for us to be able to do this for our medical students. So what was our mission? So basically, we've developed an educational escape room for our final year, 5th year medical students who are just about to become postgraduate and enter into what we call their foundation year training, which happens within their employed posts within clinical trusts. And our key focus really was to make sure that we were meeting some of the learning outcomes for graduates, which are set by an external body to the university. So that's the General Medical Council, who stipulate that these trainees must have met these goals by when they graduate in order to get a registration and be able to actually work as qualified doctors within the country. So we were looking at our non-technical skills, so communication, team working, and all of those things. So our brief basically was to facilitate an escape room activity for over 350 of our final year students over an 8-day period. So this was quite a big task for us to do, and this was in the summer last year. Tasked with creating it for rollout in actually it was March this year, and we are halfway through that program at the moment, and it has been really well received. We were on a limited budget, so we were to buy additional things than what we already had within our sort of remit in our setting, and it was to fit in with a part of a 3-part workshop, 1-day program calling leading to what we call Foundation Year 1, and it's to support what we already have in place as a fully 1-week immersive program, preparing them for their foundation years. So why are we focusing on the non-technical skills? Well, we want to prepare them for the foundation years. These are things that they still find difficult to do, working as teams, communicating with each other. We didn't want the focus to be solely on testing their clinical knowledge. At this point, they've already sat their final exams for their knowledge tests, for prescribing. They're sort of at the end goal now, but there's really just a build on their sort of prioritisation and all of these non-technical skills, which are valuable to them as they enter into a multidisciplinary workforce where they're going to need those. And we were able to enhance their debrief with our audio visual that we had available, so that we could challenge, we could reinforce, and we could reflect in a unique way the things that that went on within the escape room. So this is just briefly going through sort of the 12-month life cycle of our escape to graduate. So we've come up with a concept. So we came up with a narrative. We had to think about our escape room planning and the setup that was going to be required. We did quite a lot of testing, so we were fortunate enough that over the summer last year and into early sort of November, we were able to test the escape room 5 times with different members of the staff from the School of Medicine, who were of ranging different sort of levels, from some of our technicians to our admin staff to some of our consultant lecturers, nursing staff, etc. So it was very varied, which was useful. Once we'd done that testing, we were able to sort of move on about expansion and team education, because we couldn't have just the 4 of us being able to facilitate it. It was going to be a much bigger task than that and require quite a lot of faculty. So we did faculty training and created tools to aid with the running of it and the debrief sessions. We've executed it now. We're partway through, and we've got some really good feedback to share with you all in a moment. So our resources we did have available, so like our previous speaker, we've got a simulation suite. So we used the things we had to our advantage that we could build around and keep our budget fairly low. So if it was just an empty room, we would have built our narrative around that, which I've seen people do. But we have got a sim suite with a mannequin. We've got some AV system to be able to watch, record and deliver some messages. Should all else fail, we could stand by the room and give prompts also, so transferable if needed. Our simulation lecturers and our core skills trainees, and then we've got our mixed fidelity equipment. I'm going to hand over to Greg now, who's going to run you through a brief overview of the escape room.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks very much for listening. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief overview not going to be able to, in the time frame, go into huge amounts of the specific details. But actually, this was quite a complex escape room, actually, because we were running with 8 students per room, and we were then splitting that room over two actual rooms that students would interact with during that time. And it was a mixture of being a kind of very sequential escape room in the sense of we did have a story, a narrative and thing that ran strongly through it. But with a group this size, you need constant other tasks going on. So there were elements of non-sequential tasks within this. So the story effectively was our head of assessment for the university, unfortunately, has become very unwell, and due to pressures on our NHS hospitals, the only people left to look after him are the 5th-year medical students of our university. Now, with him being unwell, unfortunately, he's also taken all of their graduation data, put it on a password-protected USB, and they need to uncover the mystery of his illness, effectively give him some treatment, and then they might recover that information so that they can still graduate. The time limit was around about 45 minutes. We had quite a significant kind of clue index built, so we were able to help facilitate students to largely kind of complete. But we've seen a range of times from kind of 35 to 40 minutes, all the way through to about 50 minutes and 55 minutes with some additional clues and assistance. If we then go on to our next slide, I think there were 3 main phases to our escape room. And again, we're constantly having to drive the idea of we want to utilize non-technical skills, but we've also got 8 people taking part in each one of these. So we've got to keep people busy, interactive, and challenge them. And we can really do that through non-technical skills. So in the first phase, when they're all together in the first room, then actually there's a lot of stuff to do with leadership, followership, and communication. But then actually, as they split across 2 rooms, as they solve some of the initial puzzles, then it very much becomes about situational awareness. You've now got a split in the group. How do they communicate between each other across different rooms, across different places? And also then making decisions, planning, and keeping everyone up to speed can be very challenging. And then the third phase was regrouping, getting everyone back together to ultimately reach the final stage where they can then hopefully complete the puzzles and get their graduation data back. I'm just going to give you an example of a kind of game that we used. And this is going to sounds a bit abstract, I admit, but the picture does a reasonable demonstration. This is in the first room when we have someone unlock something and they actually then get a set of instructions and it says, you are the leader. And that means that, that student then has to read out a set of instructions to their whole group. And then they have to complete a task. Now, this task is a slight amendment on our Hippocratic oath that they hopefully get at the end of their graduation. And basically, all they have to do is the leader has to recite the instructions and the lines of the lyrics, give each medical student 1 line, and then they just need to go back round and repeat the line they've been given in the correct order. It should be very, very simple. These are obviously very highly educated. They're effectively doctors. They've more A stars and degrees between them than anything else. But let me tell you, this is a really prime example of how non-technical skills, no matter your clinical knowledge and clinical skill, the non-technical skills get in the way. And actually, that then takes us on to, well, what's the clinical application of this? And what's the relevance? Why are we doing this? And then if we actually were to turn these students into clinicians, you can see how very much that it might be a trauma call, it might be a met call, it might be in a surgical theatre. You can see how actually this environment where people have to effectively pass on communication, effectively have to use closed loop communication, have to do things in order, and have to actually work together to get to an endpoint is so important. And so we're able to really clearly demonstrate that. One of the more unique and innovative things that I think we're really pleased to have done is actually the debrief. So once they've completed this escape room, we have around about 30 minutes for their debrief. And this is where we're able to utilize some of the audio visual here. We're able to take them back to some really key moments in the escape room where they can watch. And we're focusing on communication, leadership, and situational awareness, and then really linking back to the video as well as showing them where does some of this break down. Now, having run this a few times, we're able to say that when people first get in the room, it can be chaos. And so we think about how we use non-technical skills there. When we come to the STAR game and we're starting to figure out leadership, followership, communication, that's another great example of where we're able to really demonstrate visibly to all the students how that has impacted on their ability to move forward with aspects of the escape room. And then we also talk about when we bring everyone back together, having achieved all these different goals, how then they can ultimately complete the escape room. And so, as well as these themes, what we did do is we also developed something we called our no text tool. And this is because actually we are quite fortunate here at the University of Liverpool in that we have a group of clinical teachers who are clinicians in background. So myself, who's a GP, we have acute medical consultants, we have a range of other people. And to try and standardize what we're delivering from a non-technical perspective, we came up with this no text tool, which has the focus of the themes that we've talked about before, but also actually really closely links into some real clinical examples. Because I think that's the thing, we knew that probably the students would find it entertaining, fun, maybe, but actually we've got to make sure they realize how that this is genuinely going to impact and how not being conscious of these in when they become doctors in just a few months' time can really influence their clinical practice. So giving them real life scenarios from clinicians has been really, really helpful as well. So I'll hand back to Gena just for some final.
Yeah,
bits.
so I'll just round it all up for us. So we have run it now for our students, and this is just some of our lovely images that we do consent for them at the end. So a bit like an escape room, they get their board, they've got graduation caps, and we have some lovely pictures which they're all asking how they can get their hands on. So I think that's going to go out in a big news bulletin to them all at the end of the year, which will be lovely for them. But they found it highly enjoyable, fun, found it effective as a learning tool, which is great to hear. They're appreciative of how much has gone into designing it and the effort. I'm quite impressed with our skills, I think, in building an escape room. They valued the debrief session, and they have given us some suggestions for improvement in the way of they would have liked maybe smaller groups, but unfortunately with such a huge cohort to try and get them through and factor that into their timetable was quite challenging. But we are looking at our improvement as we go forward. So what do we hope they learn? We hope that they learn that clinical knowledge isn't enough, that, you know, the way we communicate and making sure we've got all those good non-technical skills and awareness of things is going to overall improve their informants and patient safety, how teamwork impacts the outcomes, and just the value of reflection. So it gives them an opportunity to reflect on how they dealt with a stressful situation, or to look back over. So what have we achieved as a medical school? We feel like we've been able to diversify our teaching. So we know that people have said before, how do you get people to buy into it as a way of delivery, and that we've shown that we're dynamic in our teaching and learning, and that we're willing to modernise, and that we were able to do it in a short space of time. So to get something from paper last summer into this academic year is usually, I think it's a bit rare to go through border studies, etc. But we have achieved it, so we are proud of that. Thank you for listening. Obviously, we'll take questions at the end, like Brian said, but this is all our staff groups who took part in our lovely testing for us. So as you can see, lots of smiley faces helped us out.
Yes, I think another neat side benefit of having people play test is that they see what you're doing, they get inspired, they, get ideas, and also there's team building amongst them. So that's kind of fun.
The amount of requests we have now to do these escape rooms for the staff and not the students, because they all want to give it a go.
I love it. That's fabulous.
So hello, I'm Deb. I'm an instructor and course designer for the Center for Talented Youth. It's a program run by Johns Hopkins University. And a little bit about our program. It was founded in 1979. It's for grades 2 to 12. I think now we've actually expanded to kindergarten as well. It's a gifted enrichment program. So it's not a full-time program. It's not like an actual physical, school for, like a yearly school or whatever. It's these enrichment programs. In the summer, we've got classroom programs that are both day programs like camp, and then we have overnight programs, 3-week programs, and then year round there's online classes as well. different formats and topics on that. So I've been an instructor there since 2014. I used to teach classroom, ancient history in the classroom, which was a lot of fun. I did a lot of, like, looking back, I did a lot of escape room things, like that now would be qualified as escape rooms. I just call them interactive activities, team-based activities and games. And unfortunately, COVID really did a number on our classroom programs, and a lot of it went online. And so since then, since COVID, I've been online. I teach design thinking and creative writing. So my big courses, or one of my courses, is Whodunit, mystery writing for grades 3 and 4. They're a lot of fun. They're wildly creative, and working with gifted students is they're great. You just they will go, they think sideways. So you can't like expect them to just follow, oh, we do this and we do this and then we do this, and they'll be like, but what about this? And can we do this and this? And so you have to give them a lot of choices, but also a lot of guidance, because otherwise they just go all over the place, which is part of the fun of teaching them. We use a trade book called Chasing Vermeer, which is excellent. And it's these two kids, Calder is who's on the right, and then Petra, who's the girl. They're trying to find this missing painting, and there's lots of puzzles and clues, and even the pictures. There's some illustrations in the book that even have puzzles in them, and pentominoes, which are those little tangrams. If you grew up playing, it's like the Tetris pieces. Those are pentominoes. And we cover, the basic stuff. There's lots of activities, brainstorming, talking about mood and voice, tropes, character development, red herrings, trail of clues, etc. A lot of class discussions, a lot of peer editing, a lot of breaking it down into, pick out your setting, pick out your characters, create a trail of clues, what different types of clues you can do. They have fun with that. And so, I think there's, this is it's structured, but there's a lot of freedom in it. And, the kids come up with wild ideas, which is great. You want to encourage that within within reason. And we actually, I wasn't the course designer for this one. I modified it, but there was an original escape room, but it was a Google Forms escape room. And please don't do Google Forms escape rooms. They're just, they're fiddly, and they're not really escape rooms. They're just kind of quizzes that you put in a Google form with some structure around them. But I was like, oh, don't want to deal with this. And it was also broken. So that was the other thing about, since different, I'm not the only teacher of this course. So when you create stuff for this courses, everybody has to use it. So after all of that, you think we're going to get awesome stories. This is about my best impression of how their stories always end up. They start out really well. They start out really organized. They set up their crime, their characters, their trail of clues, and they end up in a Michael Bay-esque chase scene that is just over the top. And you're just like, realistic? Does it really work? And they're really, and of course they're kids. So they're like, they all have Batman tool belts that just happen to have the right tool, or they find the right hidden thing, or the trap door, or the escape room, So it's, and if fan fiction, or like that type of writing, if there's a trope called Mary Sue, where people write themselves into the story. And so, yes, and that's fine. I don't mind that, but it's just like, okay, kids, we talked about mystery writing versus adventure action writing, and somewhere along the line that message gets crossed and forgot, because they get all excited about writing and they want to do these big action scenes and everything. So yeah, so what to do. So I created my own escape room. I said, all right, we obviously need more help about this. And what's, a fun, playful way. This is done in Animal Crossing. Thanks, COVID, for getting me through, or thanks, Animal Crossing, for getting me through COVID. And I basically set up the room I wanted to do in Animal Crossing and took a screenshot of it. You can export your pictures, and the kids think it's funny because they all know Animal Crossing. And I have the artistic ability of, an ant. So I was trying to, mock it up like a crime scene schematic. I'm like, this is way too hard. I can just, I have the things I need. So to point stuff out, my little pointer working. So the premise is that it's, they start out, they're all crime scene investigators. They're a forensic team. We have to explain forensics is, again, third and fourth graders. They haven't binge watched Law and Order yet. And that also stresses that it's a crime scene. They can't just destroy the room or turn things over, or, you know, they have to be methodical about their investigation on that and try and preserve the crime scene. So they get there and they see this, there's a brick room. They're lured down by a voice saying, "Hey, what's this?" And they rush down to the basement of this there's a house of an art thief. And the door shuts behind them and disappears. You know, it's a flat door. There's no locks, there's anything, they can't do it. And it's a brick wall, they can't bust through it. So they have to figure out the way. So they've got this cabinet here, utility cabinet. It's got a note on it and a padlock. They've got these cabinets here. They've got this sad looking plant. Animal Crossing doesn't have a sad looking plant. I said, use your imagination. We're doing that. It has a, you know, this old mat in front of a utility sink, washer dryer. On that, a basket of laundry that doesn't look like it's too stinky, and some utility shelves with some old paint cans and tools and various things. And that's it. It's a bare room. They have to figure it out. So then, you know, we go around, we say, "What's that?" So the first thing they find is the note on the door, or the note on the cabinet. And it's like, "Oh, that sets up, you're trapped. You have to get out, you know, so long, suckers." Dramatic. Oh no. They look at the plant. If they look under the mat, there's a number. That's their first clue. They find that the water is shut off. They can't turn it on. Then if they look in the laundry, they get this note crumpled in the pocket, and it says, you know, that's a clue. You know, you have to water my plant each week. Have fun doing it, whatever it is, blah, blah. So then again, they'll probably go back and, "Can we water the plant?" "No, you can't water the plant." I have to figure out some way to turn it on. And again, you have to coach them through it because they've never had to, you know, fix their own plumbing. And on the utility shelves over here, there's a paint can that they have to find a screwdriver and pop the top on, and then this blah, blah, blah. Receipt here, they have to add up the numbers. They have to figure out how to add up the numbers. And it's like, I don't tell them that. They look at that. There's also some change in the can, and there's change in the lint trap of the dryer. Those are both red herrings, as they end up, you know, like $1.23 or something. They're not nice round numbers. This is a nice round number. That should be a clue. Clue, kids, clue. Then then I usually have to say, "Well, there's some tools here that looks like a wrench, and there's a bolt under the sink. Maybe you can use the wrench to fix the sink." And so that's what they do. They figure that out. They put the plant under there. The plant opens, it blooms, and a key falls out of one of the blooms. It has a number on it. That's their second number. Actually, they've got all three numbers right now, but they don't know it yet. And so then they take the key, or they go over to the cabinets over here. They find that two out of the two are open, one is not. The key fits the lock there. They get this really horrible AI painting, and on the back there's another note. And of course, these bold numbers, typical escape room clue, tell them the order of the numbers to put on the lock, and they're free. Yay! I also should have mentioned I was inspired by Escape This Podcast, if that Scott Nicholson mentioned yesterday. I think it's their first episode. Alex's bathroom had a similar plant, a plant clue, which I thought was pretty fun, and it was different on that. And so that they get through this, and this leads to really good discussions of what kinds of clues there are, how they fit together, and big improvement. So less Michael, stories now are less Michael Bay, more Alfred Hitchcock, thankfully. They've got better story structures and trailer clues, and fewer rewrites. And if you don't know, trailer clues is like, how the clues fit together in a mystery story. This leads to that, leads to that, leads to Maltese Falcon or whatever. And there's a lot of advantages to this. It's experiential learning. So they're actually, instead of just reading it in a book or doing exercises, even though they're fun exercises, they create their own clues, and they trade them with people, other students, and they try and figure out each clues and puzzles and what they really do that, but they don't connect the puzzles, that types of stuff to the writing. And this really brings all of what they've learned together. We can talk about the clues in the book that they've read, about how they're structuring their lessons. I mean, their stories and that. And it's just a really nice way of doing that. It takes about 20 minutes. They have a lot of fun doing this. And again, it's online, and they get really excited. on that, and I think it sparks their ideas and gives them a better way forward. So we don't have exploding Michael Bay chase scenes at the end. They still do that, but at least they're a little moderated, and you can talk to them about it. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, let me figure this out. So that's my little escape room. Thank you, everyone.